I'm David Mason, the Director of Public Health for the town of Sandwich. And today, this is what I'll refer to as video number 2 with regards to the WIF, or the Water Investment Infrastructure Fund. And you have seen there is video 1, which you may have seen or you can look into, which was done with Town Administrator George Dunham and the Selectman Chair, Mike Miller, in which we talked about the history of the WIF. So if you're not sure where this money is coming from when you're listening to this educational video, I ask you to go back to video 1 to get an understanding about what the WIF is and how this funding is occurring, because it's a transfer of existing funds that currently exist at this point. And the purpose of what we're going to talk about today is there's some very strategic components that have been put together that we're looking to fund. With me today is Ed Leonard. He is a professional engineer with Wright Pierce, who has been our wastewater consultant since we initiated the Comprehensive Water Resource Management Plan, and has been integral in many communities with regards to wastewater and development of plans. So he has a lot of background and history in this work, and he is the one that worked with us to say we need a better strategy to approach development of an implementation of the CWRMP. And what we're talking about it today is that. And one of the biggest things Ed wanted me to bring up too is that in requesting these funds for these components, that we are actually we're leveraging larger amounts of money through either federal stimulus funds or some other means. So we're utilizing what we have in our pocket today in order to achieve and having access to more money later to help fund the rest of this project. Does that about sum it up, Ed?
Yeah, that's a great summary, Dave.
Okay, so so one of the first things on that list, and you'll see me looking down too, is that I can't keep track of all these, is the preliminary engineering report for the collection and conveyance elements. So each of these have a price tag on them. You'll see a chart come up which shows, again, this isn't a menu. We're not selecting each piece or component. This is a 1.4 million request, and as was outlined by Bud Dunham. So the first one being the preliminary engineering report for the collection and conveyance elements. What is that, Ed?
Sure. Let me just take 30 seconds and take half a step back. We worked with the town to develop this strategy for this fiscal year to try and get the town in position to hit the ground running on the project in the upcoming year or so. So the 3 key things that we really need coming out of this appropriation request at the end of it is approval from MEPA and the Cape Cod Commission, and MEPA is the Mass Environmental Policy Act. We need a groundwater discharge permit, and we need to position the town to get clean water state revolving funds from the DEP, as well as Cape and Island water protection funds from the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund or collaborative. So this scope of work that the town's requesting money for is to hit each of those topics as the items needed to hit those topics. So on this specific item you asked about, Dave, the preliminary engineering report for collection and conveyance, it's essentially the initial building block for the design and construction of the facility. So we would develop preliminary engineering design criteria for the collection system, the sewers, the pump stations, the force mains, look at initial layouts of the system, where things would go in town, identify particular parcels for publicly owned infrastructure, pump stations, and the like, and then develop cost estimates for that infrastructure. And as a part of doing that, we would identify service areas, where specifically in town would be served as a part of this initial phase of the project. And we would do some thorough coordination with the various utilities that would be sharing roadways with the Sandwich Water District, electric, gas, and utilities like that, and Mass DOT for the highways and
DOT. So that would also be, Ed, that would be the train tracks, the people that own those easements, and
Yep.
and the State Department of Transportation relative to Route 6 and how we deal with that.
Correct.
Okay. So as far as as far as that collection and conveyance report, what I mean that task, what would it look like in the end? What do we have to at that point?
Your report several inches thick with with maps in it that would identify locations of the initial infrastructure.
Okay.
So it would be a good sized report that would be used as a building block for those approval processes, regulatory approval processes.
Very good. And then the next task on there is the hydrogeologic evaluation and report. So
Right.
what is that about?
So that's it's a required step in order to get a groundwater discharge permit. And as everybody knows in the Cape, the conventional method of wastewater disposal is effectively land-based disposal to the groundwater. So it's what we're talking about here is municipal scale leach fields, leaching systems. So in order to get those permitted and designed, you have to do a bunch of work in advance. You have to assess receptors, you have to do some mapping work, you have to do field work to assess the soil conditions, how groundwater moves through the sites, develop desktop models to predict where water goes and how quickly it gets there, document all that in a report that's fairly prescriptive in terms of what's required by DEP in order to review it, and then take that through the review processes.
Okay, so, and we're not, as far as not getting into a lot of detail, but, so that's that land area. It's land that, just for knowledge, that town meeting has approved in the past, the utilization of wastewater. So, and that has been noted and documented in past town meetings for that land area. Okay, so anything else on that, Ed, as far as that report? So that's something the state's looking for also in terms of part of this permitting process. So it is required.
Yep.
Okay, and then the third task is the preliminary engineering report, the treatment and disposal component for the groundwater discharge permit application. So give us some details on that.
Sure. So that's similar to the preliminary engineering report for collection and conveyance. We need to do the same thing for treatment and disposal. So that'll involve the same task, developing preliminary design criteria, initial site layouts, and cost estimates for the treatment plant location, for the piping that would go between the treatment plant and the disposal sites, and then the disposal sites as well.
Okay, I think worth noting, because we brought this up with Bud Dunham and Mike Miller, is also the fact that we have three schools in town with treatment plants, and as far as we've talked a lot about these. You've worked with the school administration relative to the treatment plants, specifically the high school, and they are past due in terms of need for upgrades or retrofitting, should I say, relative to type of treatment.
Yep.
That DEP has been very generous with us with their time. And but what we're looking to do, a component of this too, is getting these 3 schools tied into this treatment plant, which is actually, in the long run, a cheaper alternative, wouldn't you say?
That was the analysis we did as a part of the CWRMP, correct?
Yes, so that becomes a component of it, and the schools become a big part of it. And
Right.
so we initiated all this work on the basis of the comprehensive water resource management plan, but who worked on it with us was the Water Quality Advisory Committee, which was people within the town and officials that worked on the development of that plan. And we had many ideas in the plan, but as policies change and direction of the town, the CWRMP plan changes a little, correct?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we had dozens of meetings, I would say, with the Water Quality Advisory Committee. We probably had a dozen meetings with the Select Board over the numerous years and it took to develop the CWRMP, which was in December 2017 when that was finalized. But since then, the town's been working on advancing some of the initiatives that were recommended coming out of that report, including evaluations with Joint Base Cape Cod and adjacent municipalities. And during that work since that time, the path has become clearer. And so we need to go through this update task in order to bring the report up to date to reflect what the town has done, what the plan is for moving forward, being specific on what's going to happen with the school treatment plants and the treatment facilities and groundwater discharge permits that they have as well, and put all that into a one document that we can then resubmit to DEP and the Cape Cod Commission for review.
Okay, and that is a requirement as we finalize our game plan and really narrow down what we're doing. They need to see that documented.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's necessary in order to make the MEPA submittal, to get the Cape Cod Commission's 208 consistency review completed. It's necessary to get onto the DEP's Clean Water State Revolving Fund intended use plan, which is how DEP prioritizes their limited funds to go out to communities that have environmental projects that need to be implemented.
Okay, great. So those are the components, that's the meat of the request for town meeting. We do have other components, and there'll be additional videos to educate the public as far as what we're asking for and why. And with these tasks that we just talked about, could you just again reiterate, and we'll end on your comments regarding how this money will leverage additional money. Could you just go over that again?
Sure. So the town established the WIF fund several years ago, which I think was a great move on the town's side to have a funding source to move things forward. But these projects are expensive and take a long time to implement. The DEP Clean Water State Revolving Fund program is a subsidized loan program, which also has a principal forgiveness component, which is not a grant exactly, but it's a lot like a grant. It also allows the town to leverage the Cape and Island Water Protection Fund funds, and having these approvals in place allow the town to also make applications to other agencies through the Commonwealth, other agencies through the federal government to try and capture grant funds that are available for this type of construction.
And that's perfect. So what we're in the long run, what we're looking to do is, we had a WIF request for so many years that the WIF would last, and we're looking to achieve, this project to bring it to fruition but at the same time, not spending all the taxpayers' money to do it at this point. Simple way to put it.
Sure.
Okay. So I think that wraps up our video for today for this subject. And what we'll do is, again, we're going to discuss in the next video intermunicipal technical assistance. And Ed alluded to that relative to working with our abutting communities and dealing with our communities that we have shared watersheds. And so we will take up that conversation in the next video. So again, Ed, thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity, Dave. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you.